The European Parliament has long called for the modernisation of the legal framework on copyright. As the Commission is busy drafting new rules for the end of 2015, MEPs are preparing to vote on a report on this issue. Stay with us and we'll talk you through the details. Copyrights are exclusive intellectual property rights protecting the original work of an author, for example, a book, film or software, and the interest of those, like publishers or broadcasters, who make these works available to us. So how are their rights protected in Europe?
Well, the 2001 Copyright Directive is one of the main texts governing copyright law in the EU. But in an increasingly digital and global environment, is this legislation still appropriate?
The list of shortcomings that need to be addressed is certainly growing bigger and bigger. Let's take geo-blocking, for example. MEPs complain that user access to certain content services is too often denied on geographical grounds, and they urge the Commission to propose new ways to improve the cross-border accessibility of services and copyrighted content.
So, following a series of consultations, the European Commission concluded that the EU's copyright legislative framework had to be modernised. But what does the Parliament think of all this?
Well, the Parliament's Legal Affairs Committee has long pleaded for EU copyright laws to be reviewed. In an own initiative report by German MEP Julia Reda, it calls on the Commission to present a bold reform to strike a fair balance between all interested parties, consumers, users, creators and rights holders, and between the private and public domains.
The report, which will be voted on in the Parliament's plenary session next week, invites the Commission to study the impact of the introduction of a single European copyright title on jobs and innovation, the interests of authors and right holders, and the promotion of consumers' access to cultural diversity.
The report also invites the Commission to consider strengthening some exceptions to copyright protection, especially for libraries and for research and education purposes, and even to make certain exceptions mandatory.
And finally, the report also urges the Commission to propose ways to improve the cross-border accessibility of services and copyrighted content for consumers and in the interest of cultural diversity.
So let's stay tuned to see what happens during next week's plenary vote in Strasbourg.
You're listening to the European Parliamentary Research Service podcasts.